Finding ways to upcycle old buildings is pretty awesome, regardless of what kind of building it is being renovated. But to me, the successful conversion of an old power plant is about the pinnacle of adaptive reuse projects. To take something so specifically purpose-built and give it a second life as something completely different is just downright cool. So with that being said, here are 10 of the coolest power plant conversion adaptive reuse projects. Starting off the list at number 10, we're headed to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for the Delaware Power Station. Built in 1921, the former coal plant lies on the banks of the Delaware River in Philadelphia's Fishtown neighborhood. At one point, it was the largest power plant in the city of Philadelphia, capable of generating about 180,000 kilowatts from 6 massive turbines. It was also notable for being one of the first power plants built using reinforced concrete rather than a steel frame. Despite its grand start, like everything, eventually its technology became obsolete, and for much of the last few decades it sat abandoned. The elements and vandals took their toll on the old building, and many wondered if it was destined for the wrecking ball. The property changed hands several times, but finally around the year 2020, work began on a $150 million revitalization of the site. In 2023, the 500,000 square foot Powerhouse building reopened primarily as luxury apartments. The redevelopment known as the Battery would also include an event venue and hotel and office space in the nearby Switchgear building. Next up at number 9, we're headed down I-95 a couple hours to Baltimore, Maryland for the Pratt Street Power Plant. While it was under construction in 1904, the Great Fire of Baltimore took place. Despite virtually all the buildings in the area burning to the ground, the partially completed power plant was unscathed. 5 years later, the plant was finished, and in 1909 it opened up. It was used to generate power for the city's extensive streetcar system. Later in its history, as technology changed, it would become one of the primary generators for the city's steam system. By the 1970s, however, it would eventually become obsolete and would be shut down permanently. The revitalization of the iconic brick building didn't go totally smoothly. In the mid-1980s, Six Flags tried to open up an indoor theme park. The park didn't actually have any rides though, so perhaps somewhat unsurprisingly, it was a flop and folded in only a couple years. After that, the site was briefly a nightclub called PT Flags. This too only lasted for a few years. Following these unsuccessful attempts, a developer in the area bought the property and invested $40 million to remake it into a mixed-use venue. More recent tenants have included the ESPN Zone, Barnes & Noble, and a number of restaurants. Today the site sees millions of visitors annually. On to number 8, we have the Hydroelectric plant at Niagara Parks on the Canadian border near Niagara Falls. Work on the Toronto Generation Station was completed in 1906 for the Electrical Development Company of Ontario. The station's design was ambitious for its time, boasting a generating capacity of over 100,000 kilowatts. The plant featured a series of turbines and generators connected by long vertical shafts. Water from the turbines flowed through brick-lined tunnels, exiting at the base of Niagara Falls. Notably, it was the first wholly owned Canadian hydroelectric facility at Niagara Falls, where engineers had adapted advanced American and European technologies to the challenging site. The station supplied power to Toronto and played a crucial role in Ontario's industrial development. Architecturally, the power station is remarkable for its symmetrical plan, limestone exterior, and its more ornate finishes than many other industrial buildings from that time period. The interior boasts a grand foyer and marble walls and tile floors. Opened in 1906 to supply the Toronto market, it was later purchased by Ontario Hydro in 1922 and continued operations until 1974. After nearly 7 decades in service, it was finally shut down. Now it's a National Historic Site, and the power plant itself is in the middle of a significant revitalization. Other Niagara Parks buildings have already been updated, but the main building at the Toronto generating plant is set to become a luxury hotel. Work is expected to be complete in 2027. At number 7, we have the Seaholm power plant in Austin, Texas. It came online in the 1950s as Austin's population was really starting to take off, and for a time it was the city's primary source of power. For years, the plant and its 5 massive boilers were a critical piece of infrastructure for the city. Its importance began to wane in the 1980s as newer facilities were built, and in 1989, the Seaholm plant was finally shut down. It would be used for about another decade as a training facility, even though it wasn't actually a source of power for the city anymore. Several decades later, the Austin City Council began looking at proposals to redevelop the long vacant site. A $130 million adaptive reuse project commenced, and in 2015, the area reopened as a mix of residential, commercial, and retail space. A couple of key highlights for the redevelopment were the creation of 280 condos, 140,000 square feet of office space, 50,000 square feet of retail space, and the preservation of the well-known Art Deco facade. At number 6, we have the Tate Modern. The Tate Modern Museum is housed in the former Bankside Power Plant. Designed by Sir Giles Gilbert Scott, the power plant was constructed in multiple phases. The original structure featured a massive turbine hall over 100 feet tall and 500 feet long, with a boiler house and central chimney. It operated from 1891 to 1981, supplying London with electricity and serving as a training facility for electrical and mechanical apprentices. After its decommissioning in 1981, the site was dormant until 1994, when it was selected for the Tate Modern redevelopment project. Swiss architects spearheaded the project. The transformation began in 1996 by stripping the building back to its steel structure and brickwork. The turbine hall became a dramatic entrance and display area, while the boiler house was converted into galleries. Since opening in May 2000, the Tate Modern has welcomed over 40 million visitors, generating an estimated $100 million extra annually for London's economy. In 2009, a major expansion project took place, incorporating the power station's oil tanks and adding new gallery space, further cementing Tate Modern's status as a world-class art institution. Down to number 5, we have a very different but also very cool adaptive reuse project. The T. Tyler Potterfield Memorial Bridge in Richmond, Virginia, transformed an obsolete hydroelectric dam into a pedestrian and cycling pathway. Originally constructed in 1901 by the Virginia Electric and Power Company, the 31-foot-tall structure diverted water into the Hacksaw Canal for power generation at the 12th Street Power Station. It was eventually decommissioned in 1968. In 2016, the 1,700-foot-long, 10-foot-wide bridge opened to the public, becoming Richmond's first dedicated pedestrian and cycling bridge to cross the James River. The $11 million project was able to repurpose the existing concrete piers and steel infrastructure. The bridge quickly gained popularity, attracting 35,000 visitors in its first month, despite it being unseasonably cold that month. It connects downtown Richmond to the Manchester neighborhood across the James River and offers unique perspectives of the city and incredible views of the river's rapids. Moving on to number 4, we're headed back to New York City. The Brooklyn Rapid Transit Power Station, which now houses Powerhouse Arts, dates back to the early 20th century. Designed by Thomas Edward Murray, the power station was completed in 1904 to serve the expanding railroad and streetcar system in Brooklyn. The original complex comprised of 2 main structures, the turbine hall and the boiler house. The power station played a crucial role in Brooklyn's industrial development, supplying electricity to the transit system. However, despite this, its operational life was relatively short-lived. The facility was decommissioned in the 1950s. Around this time, the boiler house was demolished. The remaining turbine hall fell into disrepair in the following decades. In the 2000s, the abandoned power station took on a new identity. It became a popular spot for graffiti artists and urban explorers, earning the nickname the Bat Cave among locals. Recently, the site was transformed into the Powerhouse Arts Building, an extensive $180 million project that attempted to balance preservation with modernization. 90% of the old bricks were kept, including large portions still covered in decades of existing graffiti. The new facility houses all kinds of art spaces, including workshops for ceramics, printmaking, and textiles. Coming down the home stretch at number 3, we have the Yangshupu Power Plant in Shanghai, China. First commissioned in 1911, it was the first coal-fired power plant in the Far East and a cornerstone of Shanghai's early industrialization. Originally designed and built by British engineers, it made Shanghai only the 3rd city globally to produce on a large scale like this. The plant operated for nearly a century, closing officially in 2010. In 2022, construction began to transform the historic site into a new industrial base for global energy and environmental sector headquarters. The project includes a total construction area of approximately 3 million square feet and a total investment of almost $7 billion US. Key features of the development include the preservation of 2 original industrial chimneys, adaptive reuse of the main plant structure, and the addition of modern skyscrapers for corporate headquarters. Led by an interdisciplinary team of Chinese and British, the redevelopment aims to honor the site's industrial heritage while creating a dense and vibrant mixed-use community. At number 2 is my favorite project on the list, but in terms of size and scale, it's a lot smaller than some of the other ones we've already talked about, and it is the Boathouse at Rockets Landing in Richmond, Virginia. Originally constructed in 1887, the building served as the electrical power plant for Richmond's, at the time, cutting-edge, fully electric trolley car system, which operated from 1888 to 1949. The historic structure played a crucial role in powering the city's transportation network for those 6 decades. After the trolley system's demise, the power plant sat vacant for decades. In 2007, though, the structure underwent an award-winning renovation, transforming it into the Boathouse. The renovation was applauded by many and resulted in numerous architectural and design awards for the development team. The renovated building not only houses the Boathouse restaurant, but also serves as the home to the Virginia Boat Club and the VCU crew team. Here's an honorable mention for the revitalization of the failed Satsop nuclear power plant. I'm not sure this one totally fits on this list because in its original form it never actually functioned as a power plant. After billions of dollars were spent, the original nuclear project was abandoned before it was finished in the 1980s. But since this abandonment, it's undergone a remarkable transformation to make the best of a bad situation. Since then, it's been repurposed into a thriving business park and industrial center. The site's unique features have attracted a diverse group of tenants. A world-class acoustics laboratory has been established in the reactor building, utilizing its thick concrete walls for sound testing. The complex also serves as a training site for firefighters and has been used in several films. Additionally, part of the site now has been developed into the Grays Harbor Energy Center, a natural gas power plant. So, all in all, not exactly like the other ones on this list, but an interesting revitalization nonetheless. At number 2, we have the Beloit College Powerhouse project. Transformed the decommissioned Black Hawk generating station into a 120,000 square foot student union and recreation center. It was originally built in 1913 by the Wisconsin Power and Light Company. It was expanded in 1927, then again in the mid-1940s. It finally ceased operations in 2010. The $38 million renovation retained the original red brick, yellow brick, and concrete structures while adding a 17,000 square foot field house. The project preserved historical elements including industrial equipment and architectural features while also incorporating an awful lot of modern amenities. The Powerhouse features a suspended running track, an 8-lane competition pool, a recreational gym, an auditorium, and student lounges. The revitalization not only benefits the Beloit College students, but also connects the campus to the local community. A new pedestrian bridge and riverwalk were added, filling in an 850-foot gap in public access along the river. And finally, we've reached number 1, the Battersea Power Plant, an iconic Art Deco landmark on the south bank of London's Thames River. It has a rich history spanning nearly a century. Designed by Sir Giles Gilbert Scott, the power plant was built in 2 phases. Battersea A was created between 1929 and 1935, while Battersea B was completed in 1955. It mirrored the first phase and created the distinctive 4-chimney silhouette that's well known today. At its peak, the station generated about a fifth of London's power. The structure is absolutely massive, with the chimneys rising 300 feet. The main boiler house is so big that it could accommodate the entire St. Paul's Cathedral inside of it. Despite initial public opposition to the project, primarily due to pollution concerns, the power station incorporated innovative features like a flue gas washing system to reduce sulfur emissions. The lavish interior included marble panel control rooms and terrazzo flooring in the turbine hall. The power plant ceased operations in 1983 after about 50 years in service. It remained dormant for decades, with numerous failed redevelopment attempts. Then finally, in 2012, Malaysian investors initiated a multi-billion-dollar renovation project. The ambitious plan transformed the 42-acre site into a mixed-use complex and was able to preserve much of the building's historic character. The revitalized Battersea Power Station opened in 2022, featuring 254 apartments, 115 shops, and 35,000 square meters of office space. Apple's London headquarters now occupies a large part of the footprint within the structure, marking a totally new chapter in the power station's storied history.